Hello and welcome to Leviathan News. It's November 20th, and I'm here with Garrett. What's up?
Morning.
Good morning.
Thanksgiving week.
It is Thanksgiving week. Did you have a good weekend?
I always have good weekends, so that's a yes.
Yeah. Well, it's probably better than what's happening at OpenAI. Normally, we wouldn't cover like AI sort of stuff, but this has just been honestly one of the most drama-filled weekends that I can remember when it comes to corporate governance. Just the amount of flip-flopping and drama and just rapid news on Twitter has just been incredible. So let's run through what happened, okay? On Friday noon last week, okay, OpenAI releases a blog post that really shocked everybody in essentially saying that Sam Altman was gone. The WorldCoin founder was essentially kicked out by the nonprofit that owns OpenAI. And let me just stop here for a second. So OpenAI has this like really weird company structure. It's very strange. There is a for-profit company, but the for-profit's owned by a nonprofit, and the nonprofit essentially controls everything that happens at the for-profit. Microsoft invested into the for-profit, but they're a minority shareholder. They own 49%, while the nonprofit owns 51%. So apparently they did this so that the nonprofit board members could essentially have full discretion on the creation of AGI, like artificial intelligence that was like quote unquote safe for all of humanity. And we can talk about like the whole like safetyism versus like doomerism stuff later on. But essentially they came around and they fired Sam from the company, right? So they put out this like really harshly worded statement saying that like Sam has not been candid in his communications with the board, and the board no longer has confidence in his ability to continue leading OpenAI. Essentially saying that like Sam was a liar, right? In this initial statement, it was really harsh, pretty nasty. In addition to that, they removed Greg Brockman from his position as chairman of the board, and then he also resigned as well too. And then they announced that the CTO, Mira Murati, would be the interim CEO. And it just, people were in shock, honestly. Nobody really knew what was happening. I don't think that anybody was really prepared for this, and not even OpenAI's investors were, right? We found out later that Microsoft learned 1 minute before the blog post went out that Sam was being fired, and also the other investors as well too, really giving like no time to discuss or like talk with the board. We had a bunch of posts that came out on Friday night. Greg Brockman posted something essentially saying, like all lowercase as well too, funnily enough, saying, "I'm super proud of what we all built here together since starting in my apartment 8 years ago. We've been through tough times, great times together. But based on today's news, I quit. Genuinely wishing you all nothing but the best. Continue to believe in the mission of creating safe AI." So apparently what happened was that the night before on Thursday, the three board members called Ilya and essentially got him to flip and wanted to kick Sam out, right? And so he contacted Mora, the CTO, and said that, "Hey, you're up. We're going to be firing Sam tomorrow." On the okay, so all that goes down, right? Everybody gets fired, and it's essentially like a coup, right? Because the people that were firing Sam were these like safetyism people. They would think that the AI that they were developing was moving too fast, and so they wanted to get rid of Sam to move in a more like research like strategy focus rather than growing profits. But we'll find more about this. I mean, there's a lot of this is just like shrouded, right? Like we're finding more as time goes on, and I'm sure major publications are going to really be digging into this once this whole situation's figured out, because it's not. Right. So over the weekend, people are saying that like, oh my God, Microsoft didn't even know about this. They were pissed, and they are pissed still. And they wanted to bring Sam back because they had essentially like signed up for this like $90 billion investment into OpenAI. And here they had just fired the face of the fastest growing company in the entire world that has essentially taken this company from zero to a $90 billion valuation. Now he's gone without zero input from them as well too. So like over the weekend, there was like discussions and people are optimistic that Sam's going to be back at OpenAI, right? There was like a initial deadline that was put out to the board saying that they needed to execute it by Sunday at 5 p.m. or sorry, Saturday at 5 p.m. Which they passed. Nothing happens. Like dozens and more like hundreds of OpenAI employees are publicly going on and leaving hearts on Sam's tweet saying that he loves the OpenAI team so much, right? And then on Sunday, Sam's back in the office. He posts a selfie of himself with a guest pass, saying that this is the first and last time that he's ever going to have a guest pass here. Apparently, he's in discussions with the board. Microsoft is there as well too, and everybody's wondering if that's it. That Sam's going to come back now. Well, Sunday night, we find out that Sam is not coming back. The board has now announced a new interim CEO of OpenAI. Microsoft brings Sam and Greg and his colleagues to join Microsoft in a new AI research team. And yeah, and then, you know, we're just in this like floating state right now. This morning, we got a report that Ilya, who was one of the board members who agreed to the coup and one of the co-founders of OpenAI, had essentially like recanted his beliefs that Sam should be fired and essentially signed on to a letter with 500 other people from the OpenAI company, essentially calling for the board to step down and that they had lost full confidence in the board. It's kind of crazy. I mean, there's so much here to unpack, and it's all being played out on crypto Twitter over the weekend. I'm just completely in shock at the level of drama that's happening here, and you know, this is one of the largest companies in the entire world, and it's all being played out in public. Incredible.
Yeah, it's definitely. I'm not as thoroughly researched as you because so many of the threads that I was reading on it were like speculation, and I realized this is not affecting Web3, so I should just like put it out of mind and see what happens. I have to admit to a fair amount of relief when it happened, because like back during my Silicon Valley days, I had the chance to meet both the outgoing and incoming CEO of OpenAI, and my impression of Sam from like the few seconds I met him. You know, this is just hearsay, or like don't put any stock in this. But my first thought was, this is like one of the most unctuous, disingenuous, slippery, and untrustworthy human beings I've ever met. He like kind of oozes that like startup, like entrepreneurship, like type of person that's just like willing to do, you know, lie, cheat, and steal to get their startup across. Which is a good trait in an entrepreneur and probably what makes him an effective like CEO. But when it comes to like something as important as artificial intelligence, which could threaten the fate of humanity, the fact that he's nowhere near it makes me sleep a little bit better at night.
Well, I
Wow,
think,
these are
but
harsh words.
I think it's pretty harsh. I think that like, you know, there's more than just Sam there. There's a bunch of other researchers, and like, which camp
That's
do you
funny.
follow? Like,
That's what's funny is like the more I read about it, the more I actually take his side.
Yeah.
Because
where do you fall in the AI camp? Like, are you accelerationist? Are you a decelerationist, safetyism, doomer?
I haven't read up on all the labels. I know that Eliezer Yudkowsky, I'm the opposite of whatever he is.
He's a doomer.
Yeah, I'm the complete opposite of that. I don't remotely see the case for artificial intelligence dooming humanity.
Yeah, so let me see if I can go find this. I found it really nice. So the new OpenAI CEO posted this political compass, which is
I got to talk with Moore, and he heard me bad mouthing Y Combinator, so he took me out for tacos. And while I thought he talked way too much, I thought he was pretty much, you know, free tacos. I'll take that.
Yeah. But here's the graph, right? And so everybody falls in one of these camps, right? I'm probably in the accelerationist camp, just because of that. Capitalism itself is a super intelligent being that is leading towards its own creation of AI, right? And slowing it down or moving into these like doomer means that like you as the individual somehow believe that you can think better than the all powerful market, right?
Okay.
And I
Yeah.
feel it's like some sort of like weird Gnosticism to be in the doomer camp or in the safetyism camp, because you think that you can outsmart whatever you're building, right? Or like you can outsmart the uh, concurrent like research and development that's happening globally by enacting regulations or some sort of laws that's going to slow down this technological development.
Yeah.
It's not going to
I'd be
work.
on I'd be definitely on the right side. The y-axis is kind of meaningless because it seems like a proper AI could itself accelerate the like power of the existing internet. So it seems like that kind of would render that scale a little strange. So I don't know exactly where to place it on the vertical axis. It has these like recursive properties that make it impossible. But yeah, I'm not I don't fall in line with the safetyist biased. And it seems to me from reading, you could probably speak to this more, that like that was the reason that Sam was ousted, right? That he was like trying to push things too fast and like profit too much off of it, and they
Mhm.
wanted it to be like much more secure.
Well, let's talk about the board, right? Because this is something that a lot of people have been talking about. The board is made up of four people here. We have Ilya, who is in this bottom left-hand corner, who is one of the co-founders of OpenAI and very intelligent and smart guy. I mean, I listened to a bunch of his stuff over the weekend, and he's very well thought out in why he believes about his safetyism. Um, the other people here are this is the CEO of Quora.
Oh yeah, Quora's useless. That
Well,
person's
Quora actually provided a lot of the um, what's it called, the initial data for OpenAI to use.
that
And so,
explains a lot.
yeah, so his name is Adam D'Angelo, and so Quora had a big part in helping out OpenAI in the beginning. Uh,
I have
the
a
next person,
horrible opinion of Quora, so I'll leave that for a different day.
yeah. So this is Tasha McCauley. She is the co-founder of Fellow Robotics and adjunct management scientist at Rand Corporation. Um, Notably, she is the wife of Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and the last person is Helen Toner, recently graduated from university, 2 years out from university graduation, and director of strategy and foundational research grants at Georgetown University's Center for Security and Emerging Technologies. So this is a really young board, like very, very young board, and very inexperienced. Most of these people are in their 20s, early 30s, and they probably were not in the best people to run this nonprofit. And that's part of the issue as well too, is that because OpenAI is a nonprofit, it's very much like a DAO in a sense where you could have these. We have a lot of DAOs where the DAO doesn't actually control anything, right? It's given over to a foundation. It's given to a like offshore entity, which like you raise $30 million, right? And that gets sent off to a Swiss foundation, which then has its own board of directors and people who are controlling it, right? Um, and that's very close to what we're seeing here, right? Where there's significant differences in how people want to see OpenAI move forward, but you have a nonprofit board who is not beholden to any shareholders and not beholden to like grow or uh, make a profit, making significant decisions about the companies that it owns, specifically the for-profit company, which Sam was the CEO of.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean, I can somewhat see the need to like treat it carefully and go slowly and like keep it like as an open AI like nonprofit, because it's the sort of thing that capitalism could. Capitalism is great for a lot of things, but there are some things that do benefit somewhat from being more of a public good. So I could see the argument, but that being said, like from the back and forths I saw between these the board and Sam, like for me to side with Sam, considering like my personal like gut feeling I got from meeting him, like I'm pretty like it's pretty remarkable I'm siding with Sam.
Yeah, and most people are as well too. We have a story out of Wired today that 500 employees of OpenAI have signed a letter. So 500 out of the 700 employees at OpenAI have signed a letter saying they may quit and join Sam at Microsoft unless the startups board resigns and reappoints the out CEO.
They should. That would
That's
actually
pretty.
be a good cleaning a house.
I mean, that's pretty. Well, there's a bunch of issues here, right? Is that like they're asking the nonprofit board to resign, not the for-profit company. If this was a for-profit company, this wouldn't be an issue, right? Because there would be clear goals on profitability and growth and everything else. And the nonprofit board is not looking at the OpenAI charter like that. They're more focused on safetyism and the deployment of a AI that's in their minds not going to kill everybody. And so, yeah, it's totally different, because if this was like a C corp or an LLC or something, or C corp really, then they would just fire the board, right? Board fired, shareholders come in and essentially wage a coup, and that's it. Things are over. But because of their, like, okay, so the company setup that they have is a product of their history. So the company itself was set up as a nonprofit way back in the day when it was very small, so that it could research AI. And during this time period, we're talking back in like 2015, 16. And it was just a research company, right? There was a lot of experimentation. There's a lot of research that was going on. And they started to train models out of it. It was all really small, right? And then in 2018, they released a paper called Improving Language Understanding by Generative Pre-Training, which introduced the foundational architecture for the GPT, or Generative Pre-Trained Transformer model that we use today. And that kind of created the product that we use now with ChatGPT. So from here, they transitioned from a nonprofit into a capped profit model. They wanted to increase the ability to raise capital, which they needed to run on the servers, and also have a way to like grow in the sense of being able to create products and sell them to people. So this structure was pretty novel, and so it allowed the nonprofit to control the direction of the for-profit while providing investors a capped upside of 100x. And this culminated in a $1 billion investment from Microsoft, and it started that relationship, which we see today. And so I have a picture of the structure here, which I'm going to bring up, and it just shows that how everything is controlled. So let me pull this up. Okay, so here we have the board of directors, which I just was talking about, those 4 people. They controlled the OpenAI public charity, OpenAI nonprofit, which is kind of at the heart of where all this is, like, drama is taking place. So they actually own the holding company that owns the for-profit, and then the nonprofit also wholly owns and controls OpenAI GP LLC, which controls the for-profit as well too. And then Microsoft is a minority owner in OpenAI Global LLC. So like all of the drama that we're talking about right now is happening in this nonprofit. It's not actually happening in the for-profit. And the decisions that they're making in the nonprofit can actually go around Microsoft, because Microsoft only owns a 49% control, like minority stake in the business. They have full rights to all the technology, but they have no way to change any of the like structure or like reverse these decisions that have been coming out of the board. Right. So this is going to keep on unfolding. I think we'll probably learn a lot about like governance from this, about how we should set things up. Maybe there's some things that we can take away from for DAOs as we move forward, where people actually need to have skin in the game to like as they go forward. Like there's this great clip of Sam talking about how he has no equity, no anything in front of Congress. Let me see if I can find this clip.
Slimy, untrustworthy. Get a Sam in front of Congress.
I know. Here, I've got the clip. It's just a little strange. Like, I get it. Like, if you come from this like position of, oh, hey, AI is going to destroy us all, I should just do this for the greater good of society. But it is a little weird.
I go back to your point about like if this was being run as a for-profit company, like it eliminates the debate, right? It's like a simple metric: are we making money? Are we not? When you try to optimize for something nebulous like safety, that means a million different things to a million different people. Like
Yes.
to me, I consider it massively unsafe that ChatGPT censors results to try and like fit some sort of like safety standard. I consider that massively unsafe. Other people consider it unsafe if it's actually not censoring. So it's like, it's weird.
Also, how it's not really measurable because, if it's like a financial incentive, you can measure it. Okay, are you successful? Are you not?
Exactly.
If it's for safety, like how can you ever tell? And it just goes around in circles. And by the way, guys, from what you guys just said here, doesn't it seem to you in a way an attempt by Microsoft to actually take control of OpenAI?
I completely agreed with DeFi Advisor. Like at the end of the day, like Microsoft and Google that own the compute power for it, like it doesn't matter what like front end shell you put in front of it. Like it's a debate of computing power at the end of the day, which Microsoft and Azure have a ton of.
Exactly.
What's your point, Sam?
Well, I don't think Microsoft wasn't on board with the firing, and they were furious.
Yeah, they say so, but who knows what they actually mean? Who cares what they actually say?
No, but it really matters, right? Because here is a company that was able to attract literally the smartest and brightest minds in the entire AI research space into this one company, and they'd struck gold with the product, and Microsoft.
I'd contest the smartest minds, but keep going.
Well, some of the smartest minds, right? Like these people that are working there are incredible. They've developed.
No. If you've been to any Silicon Valley company, you know that the pedigreed people are terrible. Anyway,
Okay.
Keep going.
Well, look, they're struck
pedigreed.
gold.
They're pedigreed.
Okay. I don't want to get into this talk. I don't think it's like the looking at the products that they've put out. They've struck gold. They've really developed something completely revolutionary, and Microsoft had made an investment into it, and now. If everyone walks from that company, those people are not all going to stay or just going to swap into Microsoft overnight.
Let's hope they do. Let's hope they do. That would be the best thing that could happen.
No, anyway. But like those people are going to be distributed across 100 different AI companies that are all like salivating to hire them now, and so there's going to be massive brain drain out of OpenAI. Their valuations.
Great. Do you remember what happened to Twitter when there was massive brain drain? Like all the useless people left. You found out you could run the company with like 15% of the people.
I think you're being too nihilistic about this whole thing. Like these people that are working at OpenAI were about to essentially get a $90 billion round where they're going to be able to cash out significant amounts of capital as employees that have been working there for since 2015, so almost close to a decade for some people. And now that value destruction has essentially probably, caused them to lose massive amounts of value in their employee shares. So I think
but that supports the case that Microsoft wants to this company.
No, Microsoft didn't know, and Microsoft probably.
Microsoft ended whether or not they triggered it. Microsoft did benefit the most from this, right? Would you agree with that? I don't think they triggered it, mind you. I think that they benefit strongly from it, though.
Sure, they can acqui-hire like a ton of people, bring them into Microsoft for a while, and then have first rights to invest into whatever sort of startup Sam wants to go start once he leaves in a year or two, right? But again, it's not just him, right? There are 700 people that work at this company. that have employee benefits that have been working there for years, and then you put all this time and effort into a product company, and then poof, it's the value destructions overnight is incredible, and there's just massive losses. I
You're
think
just talking about equity value destruction, right? Not actual like any tangible value destruction within the company, right?
yeah, but as an employee, like when you've been working somewhere for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and then overnight your exit is essentially destroyed. I think it's really unfortunate for a lot of people.
And that's what happened to everyone in DeFi too, and we're still here.
No,
yeah, we all lost 95% of our value from 2 years ago to now.
We lost more money on the table than them.
I think you're just being nihilistic today. I think that that OpenAI was a shining example of American dynamism, and it's not. We shouldn't be
That's
cheering
a little
for.
much. It's an artificial disclaimer machine. I like it. I use it every day. But I think that there's some massive issues at the company, and I think this is only a good thing for it.
I think you're being a little bit too nihilistic, and maybe you didn't have your coffee today.
I don't agree. I don't agree with Sam at all here. What's nihilistic about Garrett's perspective? Why is it nihilism?
Well, he's essentially cheering on for the destruction, this like value destruction of the company. Like I don't think it's. I
think he's cheering on a more like competitive market. Actually,
yeah, like a more of a course correction for the company. Let's say, I think it's a useful thing.
500 people losing 60% of your 60 to 70% of your staff in one weekend.
No, but what do you mean losing? They said they want to quit if Sam is moving. And that's why I tell you that it's probably, in my opinion at least, Microsoft pulling strings from behind the curtains, because I can see the clear, like Garrett says, Microsoft is gaining something here, and they're actually expecting most of that value, both human capital and resources with money, will flow to them, in my opinion at least.
I should issue a disclaimer. I own some Microsoft stock in an IRA somewhere from a long time back.
Well,
so in theory, I'm motivated by Microsoft doing well here.
I think it's just unfortunate, and the short-sightedness of the board to do this is going to be a case for business schools for the next centuries, right? Of like how not to run a company or a nonprofit or to engage in corporate governance.
Yeah, it's gonna be big, but with the pace that things are happening, who knows if we'll live? Who knows what's going to happen, and whether or not we'll remember it that clearly in a year or two.
I think we will. I think this is one of those events that, if we look at the similarities to like Steve Jobs leaving, being kicked out of Apple for like a decade. I mean, this is the TikTok version of that, right? Is what I saw on Twitter. Is that this is the TikTok version of Steve Jobs being kicked out of his own company and then being brought back a decade later to
I mean
reemerge and become.
I'm fairly consistent here because I never saw the appeal of Steve Jobs either.
I mean, Apple, okay, again, this is more nihilism. Apple's the number one. Apple, he took Apple to be the largest equity by market cap in the entire world.
I understand as a accomplishments in running the company. I never bought into the hero worship of him, and I think it's a little strange and off-putting.
No, I think that's a little strange. Like, hero worship is not, something to do, but looking at the growth of the company and how they've been able to develop the products that they have, really is a attestation of his leadership and what they were able to build. But we're getting off topic, right? I think the most important thing to take away is that this will be a lesson for corporate governance at pretty much every MBA going forward, of just like what not to do. And it's great for Microsoft. Sure, they get to acquire all these people for $0, and they get to keep all the IP from OpenAI. But I wish it could have worked out better. I do want to talk about a speech that I watched over the weekend, which I really liked, right? And I would recommend that everybody go watch it. It was Catherine Boyle, who is a general partner at Andreessen Horowitz, gave a speech at a defense contractor, and essentially talking about the like this word that I use called American dynamism. And she essentially came out and was talking about how, you know, if you're going to like destroy America, what would you do? Right? You would flood it with drugs. You would let the infrastructure collapse. You would let the like ruling powers essentially get older. Everything gets older, and then insert this like narcissism and nihilism into it that would essentially bring everybody's morale down and take away the ideas of patriotism and what we're building in the American project.
Sounds like you're describing the US at the moment. Actually.
Yeah, of course. I think it takes away. We forget about the, we forget about like what built America in the first place, which was a profound sense of just the ability to drag oneself up from utter, being poor and having nothing to being able to go bankrupt, lose everything, and then figure it all out again, right? And it's really only in America that we have that ability to do so.
No, I don't know. I don't think it's only in America, but I do think that it's definitely like been what's kept America at the top, like at least culturally. And I think that it's even more basic than that. I think that like it was much clearer that people, especially in the West, knew the difference between good and evil and right and wrong. Like, I don't know, a few decades ago, at least on the way it felt. I think things are much more unclear these days for so many people that they can't even tell the difference between like simple things who are pretty obvious to even to even for children.
Yeah.
So if we were just saying that it was very difficult for OpenAI to optimize towards a squishy term like safety, what would be the objective metrics you'd look at to classify America's like decline or lack of decline that would be like neutral and like uncontrovertible?
Well, let me talk about some of the things that she says here, because I think it was really like this article that she wrote and put out. She talks about how you win a war against America. And she says, you win a war against America when we stop innovating, when we become scared of technology and the drive that resides deep in our bones, when we cease to be the world's exporter of innovation and cede that role to China or to a global consortium of dunces. You win a war against America when you greet builders with suspicion, when your instinct is to destroy the weirdos doing new things on the frontier. You win a war against America when old companies become too big to fail and ensure that little ones around them are squashed instead. When we trust age more than we trust vitality, when everything is old, from our infrastructure to our industrial base to our political leaders, because we've conquered and discouraged the new. You win a war against America when our identities become more important than our duties to each other, when we turn inward and focus on our neuroses rather than the needs of our families and our communities. Around 50 years ago, sociologist Philip Rieff called modern man the psychological man in The Triumph of the Therapeutic, noting that the psychological man is literally going nowhere, but aims to achieve a certain speed and certainty in his going. And in 50 years, our new neuroticism is now a meme that mocks men who would rather build things and do things rather than go to therapy, an ethos we used to celebrate in this country. And so she keeps on going and going, talking about like all the things that we, like the fentanyl crisis, and how like TikTok is essentially giving direct access to China, to the minds of young teenagers. How we're like both siding terrorism now. Like I don't know if you guys saw the Bin Laden stuff that came out a couple of days ago. Did you see that? That was like sick, really.
Yeah, I saw some stuff because it also I'm pretty like interested in all that kind of stuff recently, even more than before. because of the situation here as well. And yeah, I think it goes to my point before when you started talking about her letter. Man, wasn't right or wrong clearer a while back? Not that long ago, even.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not that old. I'm a boomer, but not that boom.
So yeah, go ahead, Garrett.
It's nice rhetoric, but what I didn't hear from any of it was sort of objective like metrics that one would use to track these things.
Well,
'Cause I
look,
think
let me
it's very easy to cherry pick 2 points in time and say this is different from that, therefore things are bad.
I think there's a general infusion of nihilism and lack of patriotism and love for the United States that we had 20 years ago. If you look at the kind of beliefs around the
There'll be a
United
starting point. You could say what percentage of people nowadays versus like some time back like agreed that expressed to some degree of patriotism. There's probably polling there, but I'm not sure that that's like necessarily the most
No, I mean,
important
it's
metric. I think something like personal
yeah, but
GDP
it's some,
or like
no, but it's important, right? Because like there's a let me just continue, right? So she continues saying, like, some have been critical that we name this movement American Dynamism. But I'll tell you, never have two words in the investing community meant so much and stood for real civilizational truth. We often focus on America, the obvious beneficiary of our building American, was meant not only as a symbol of what we build for the unseriousness we reject, talking about like letting Iran chair the UN Human Rights Forum, but she goes on to say, but even more important than her choosing the word America is the word dynamism, the teleological end of technological supremacy. We aren't American defense or defense tech or hard tech or deep tech or military tech. Those are means to the end we aspire. But what is that end? Dynamism is growth, movement, momentum, and opportunity. In his techno-optimist manifesto, Mark Andreessen wrote, "We believe everything good is downstream of growth. We believe not growing is stagnation, which leads to zero-sum thinking, internal fighting, degradation, collapse, and ultimately death. Dynamism is life. And we embrace dynamism and the values upon which the country was founded because they are true and worth defending. Dynamism makes America the country people want to be from, to immigrate to, and to build a life, a career, or company in." Alex de Tocqueville described America as many things, but he was struck by the insatiable spirit of American dynamism and opportunity. The American lauds as noble and praiseworthy ambition what our forefathers stigmatized as servile cupidity. In America, fortunes are lost and regained without difficulty. The country is boundless and its resources inexhaustible. Boldness of enterprise is the foremost cause of its rapid progress, its strength, and its greatness. Commercial business is there like a vast lottery by which a small number of men will continually lose, but the state is always a gainer. The state is always a gainer. America always wins. And then, she ends by saying, like, we need courage. We have to have a patriotic and like core base of Americans who believe in the idea of America and will continue to be dynamic as we face this silent war. Really incredible stuff. I would watch this whole speech. We'll have a link in the comments. I watched it twice yesterday, and I thought it was really great.
I confess I'm a little underwhelmed, but I think it's because I consider myself more a citizen of Ethereum than I do of any country. Like, maybe it's just like I identify as a zoomer and not a boomer. So like, I think a lot of younger people like just like think outside this kind of concept of patriotism a bit, right? It's like I'm sure a lot of people are more loyal to their Discord communities than they are to their country nowadays.
I understand you, Garrett, and I think that now I also understand what Sam was referring to, or at least the vibe that he was referring to when he said nihilistic, because on that one, I'm definitely seeing stuff like Sam, actually. Because, all these stuff, they're true up to a certain point. Because you can be there in America and be unpatriotic and do all these things just for as long as America is still a functioning society. But if, God forbid, it stops being a functioning society, then all of a sudden these people won't see, like they will see the consequences of what they've actually been promoting. Because, and actually, I like your vision about the fact that you see yourself as a citizen of Ethereum, for example. Like it's visionary, and I get that, and it's something very like even romantic about it. But you don't get your groceries on Ethereum. And I'm not talking
Yet.
like with paying for them. Like you need real life to actually like have a place to live and eat and be protected and stuff like that. And without we like in our imaginations, yeah, it will be great if we didn't need any societies and countries, and we'd all love each other and sing kumbaya and like do barbecues. But in real life, there are people that want other stuff. Like there are people. It's all true for us who want to play fair games. But
there are evil. I think that what you're trying to say is that like there are evil people out there who would exploit our weakness
Yeah,
to literally
exactly.
kill children in their cribs,
Exactly.
as we saw recently with what happened in Israel. And
One
these
example, yeah, one example.
and it's this like clouding of what is good and evil, which people have exploited over the last 2 decades to essentially say that you don't really know what's right or wrong. Everybody has their own like truth inside these countries or peoples or societies or whatever, and that like just because you believe something is good doesn't make it good somewhere else. And I think that sort of postmodernistic nihilism has really destroyed a lot of the ideas of what it means to be like America as an entity for good. And so like I personally am drawn to crypto because I think that there's been a lot of mistakes and overreach in how the United States has conducted itself over the last 20 years. And that the systems that we're building here are a check on that power that has essentially led to repression on a global scale, both domestically and internationally. And it's necessary for the long-term health of our functioning society to build these systems that essentially can provide an outlet or an ejection seat or whatever you want to call it, a secondary financial system to help alleviate some of the pressures of this repression. And like I don't think it's I think it's patriotic in that sense. And I think that when you have a government that engages in domestic surveillance, when you have a government that is essentially looking inwards rather than outwards for threats, that's when it becomes worrisome, right? And I think that when we talk about the American ideal, it's not about like looking towards internal threats or engaging in this mass surveillance out of fear of anxiety and terrorism or whatever. It's the ability for people to come to this country and no matter who they are or where they're from, to be able to lift themselves up by their bootstraps and build something better. And she says it in her speech that like all these new things that we've built, crypto especially, we shouldn't just try to extinguish it. We're building a lot of new and novel ideas here. Some are good, some are bad, but the market will figure out at the end of the day, and we'll have a better functioning society and economy and all things because of it.
Yeah, and I think that by the way, did you guys see that the election in Argentina?
I did, yeah.
And that's actually, I think it's very connected to what you're saying, because I think that after a while of that kind of stuff, the people themselves, they want to reclaim what's theirs, and they don't really like the fact that all of a sudden what they've were taught all their lives that was true, all of a sudden is being presented as untrue. Now, of course, these stuff are complex, and there's a free market of ideas, and this free market should win. But a society that allows itself to be ruined by external forces, whether who are doing it from the outside or doing it slowly from within, is actually a society that will, at some point, in my opinion, it will reach a threshold. I'm not sure how to say that word. I'm sorry. That it's just
Threshold's
going to be
correct.
too much. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't know how to express it. I mean, that at some point it's just too much. You know, at some point you can't be politically correct and accept stuff anymore because you're realizing that, just like Sam said earlier, like they're pushing you and pushing you and pushing you to the fact that, okay, wait a minute, where is myself in all this situation? And actually, I'm very happy about what's going on, at least from what I feel about it from the outside, from what I've been listening to Milei and stuff like that. Honestly, I'm hoping Argentina is going on a very new way, and I hope it's going to actually change a lot of South America as well, and rooting for them, for sure.
So
I
I
mean,
haven't followed the Argentina stuff very closely. Is it going to become the second nation to accept Bitcoin as an official currency after El Salvador? Do you
probably
think?
not.
No.
No.
I think he's actually a big supporter of crypto as well, this guy.
Sure. But I think it's in a different way. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that he essentially wants to dollarize the country. You know, with 150% inflation, it is incredibly hard for them to like manage their economy at the moment.
They are corrupt to the bone, man.
Of
They are
course.
corrupt to the bone there.
And so switching to a fully dollarized economy will put hard limits that will prevent any sort of like waste or excess, because you just won't be able to borrow. Like it will be impossible to print more money, and they just won't be able to borrow to fund programs or sort of debt interest. Or I don't particularly understand the inner workings of the Argentinian economy, but they already have a black market dollar economy there. They're the largest users of cash, U.S. dollar cash, outside the United States, and you know the crypto markets have just enabled that to a further extent by allowing dollars to flow seamlessly from in and out of the country. And you know, if you go to Argentina, they have these little like cuevas everywhere, where you can walk into any shop and pay with Bitcoin or Tether on Tron or God knows what in these little exchange shops and get money out of it. And you know, the economy needs to be fixed, probably through dollarization. This is what El Salvador had to do as well too, switching to a dollar economy. And it takes an extreme amount of power away from the country itself to manage its own finances. But in this case, they have to beat inflation somehow, and that probably is only done through pairing everything to dollar prices and suffering for, I don't know, 5-10 years, because it's going to be hard, really hard.
I know that Javier Milei, who was elected in Argentina, is mostly about, from what I saw at least, like minimizing government. He says that like, you know, everything is so corrupt there, especially because it can be through the government, because they control these offices, these unnecessary offices. And you know, they just like decide all kind of stuff instead of letting the free market decide it. So I think this video that I've just shared with you guys in the private chat, it's really a good like example of his agenda. As he's there, just you can see him just ripping off names of all kinds of like different government entities and say afuera, afuera, like out, go ahead, like. And I think it says a lot about how much he wants to like how much he feels over regulation and not the other way around, actually.
Well, he's a ANCAP libertarian, so we'll see. We'll see what happens over the next few months. The price of Bitcoin did react positively to that. It went up $1,000 after the announcement was made. The announcement was actually figured out on prediction markets first, rather than the news, where I saw some charts showing that they sniffed it out first, that he was going to win. That's pretty cool. Okay, let's talk about some crypto stuff, because we had a bunch of fun things happen over the weekend. dYdX had some crazy, highly profitable trading strategies taken against it. So if you haven't been paying attention, Wi-Fi, the token for Yearn Finance, had a little run up over the past 10 days, going from 6,000 to 16,000, and then essentially being crushed back down to 9,000 or 8,000.
I didn't know the second part.
Yeah, within a couple of hours, right? And what had happened was that someone had figured out that they could take large amounts of open interest to essentially go long Wi-Fi and then essentially short it at the top to flip that trade. And because it's such a small token and the market cap is so small and the float is really small, they can push the price around really easily. So someone came and on November 14th and 15th, deposited a huge amount of USDC into dYdX to go long Wi-Fi. When the price rose to its peak of 16,000 on November 17th, this wallet withdrew USDC from dYdX via multiple wallets and then redeposited via other wallets into USDC, or sorry, back into dYdX to short. This allowed them to get around the single wallet limits for open interest for Wi-Fi and build up huge longs and then huge shorts. They came in, they dumped a huge portion of Wi-Fi after that on the spot market, taking the price and plummeting it. And then they withdrew while in profit and were able to use this highly illiquid market with a low float to drain $9 million from dYdX's insurance fund. So open interest on Wi-Fi at dYdX spiked from $800,000 to $67 million in less than a week, driven by one actor.
Wow.
Yeah. Antonio. Yeah. So Antonio from dYdX claims that this actor also tried to do the same with sushi the other day and was unsuccessful about that. So the Wi-Fi open interest was higher on dYdX than any other perp venue, and they did try to increase initial margin ratios for Wi-Fi prior to the price crash, but this was not sufficient. So they took a bunch of USDC out. The price crashed on the spot market, probably by the same actor, and so now they suffered a $9 million loss to their insurance fund, which essentially like covers any sort of holes that you would have from trading here. Now the dYdX people are pissed. As such, they're working with Chainalysis and other companies to track these wallets, figure out who these parties are, and report them to the feds.
Aren't they also banning overly profitable trades or something after this, or was that ban in effect beforehand?
It's kind of their fault, right? Because they allowed this amount of vote, like with these smaller altcoins, if you allow for huge open interest to be built up and essentially be taken, I mean, you're going to get screwed at some point just because everybody's going to get liquidated. Nobody's going to be able to fill the markets. And then they go after the insurance fund, unfortunately. They probably shouldn't even like list these tokens in the first place. And that's what we saw like pretty much immediately after, right? Once the dYdX news came out, they raised initial margin requirements on a ton of pairs. And they said, sorry, highly profitable trading strategies have now been banned on dYdX.
Yeah. Highly profitable trading strategies remind me only of one person when I hear this term. And so from what you were explaining here, Sam, it's basically because of the way stuff is designed on dYdX and the specific design of the Wi-Fi tokenomics that actually allowed this to happen?
Well, let's look at Yearn, right? So Yearn has a market cap right now, fully diluted market cap of $327 million. And that's at $9,000. That would have been a bit higher at, let's just say it would be $500 million, up at about $15,000. And the person who was running this trade strategy was essentially able to open a $50 million short on a $500 million token, right? So they were able to get essentially like 10% of open interest versus the float, which is incredible. It's a huge amount that you would never be able to get versus like ETH or BTC just because of the size. But because of these smaller tokens, which a bunch more listed here, like EOS, Aave, Algo. I mean, these are small. I mean, some of these have market caps in the hundreds of millions, maybe low 100 million. They're really easy to buy on the spot market and move the price a ton. And so people figured out, someone figured out that you could do this on dYdX, and they took advantage of that.
I mean, isn't this always going to be a problem with whenever you're dealing with low liquidity like tokens?
Yeah. You should just not. They shouldn't list them in the first place, or the margin requirements have to be very high, and the amount of leverage that you provide has to be like 2-3x max. It's very tough to provide.
Yeah, but they want to attract more people who want to trade, so they're trying to list tokens even if it's not 100% bulletproof, right?
Sure, but in this case, it's like a systemic risk to the exchange by allowing these pairs to trade, just because of the low float size and the size of their market caps.
So basically, you guys think that it's like dYdX should just have been prepared for it in a different way, and they are actually they brought it upon themselves in a way.
Yeah, the parameters for trading were just too not conservative enough. They allowed for too much leverage to be taken, too much open interest relative to the total market cap, and now they're having to work with putting out bounties to try to figure out who the attacker was, and then pass that information back on to the FBI.
Yeah, definitely a very important thing to consider, because in the long run, this creates more damage to them than the previous intent of allowing the Wi-Fi trading with the parameters that they've decided. Actually, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. All right, let's go on to another story. We have Woo and Kronos. So Kronos Research is a pretty well-known market maker who supplies something to the effect of 40% of all liquidity to Woo. And on the weekend, they suffered a breach of their API keys and lost what looks to be about $20 million, according to Zach XBT. Oh, sorry, $26 million. Initially, it was reported as $20 million, but was raised to $26 million later on. Afterwards, Kronos Research told stakeholders and people that were using Woo that their financial health remains robust, and that they said, quote, "Despite it being a sizable amount, Kronos remains in good standing. All losses will be covered internally. No partners will be affected." And they said that they're prioritizing security and safety and liquidity, and everything's going to be back on track. So this is the first time since 2018 that Kronos has had to pause trading due to a security breach, and they said they are working to do a postmortem to figure out what the problem was. This came as kind of a shock to a lot of people who were using Woo, because they didn't know that Kronos was 40% of the perpetual market. And so a lot of people were just confused and shocked about this. But that's how it happens with these market makers. They're a huge part of these ecosystems and provide a ton of open interest and liquidity. Right. Okay. More jail.
They call all the shots, no?
Yeah, exactly. And there's like dubious things about how they're intertwined, right?
For sure, man. Especially when the market is still relatively small, it's their playground. Like whenever I'm I don't do it that often, but whenever I talk to actors who are really playing with significant funds and are aware of the level of games being played on these levels, yeah, man. the market is still so relatively small that they can pretty much do whatever they want with it if they really know what they're planning.
Okay, so let's talk about Lawrence. Lawrence is worked at Euler, also Index Finance as well too. He put out a tweet yesterday saying, "Hey everybody, there's currently an ongoing hostile governance attack taking place against the remnants of the Index Finance treasury." Do you remember Indexed? Well,
vaguely, I
do.
can't remember.
Vaguely, yeah. So somebody had been buying up a ton of the index tokens and then is trying to do some hostile RFV by going after the governance protocol and essentially assigning themselves this DAI that's sitting there that had been set aside for to pay back people. And so he asked people to vote no because this is a hostile and that the funds are supposed to be used for other purposes. He did provide some context later on, saying that Index was attacked in October 2021, and then development ended shortly thereafter after filing a lawsuit, and it was litigated. So the protocol remained operational after being patched, but Dylan and Lawrence moved on as developers and operational maintainers to go do other projects. So he said that the index protocol is governed by a DAO underpinned by Governor Alpha, and the time lock contract which operates it contains index tokens that were set aside for the DAO to decide how to use. And then some DAI was set aside from the sale of index from that contract, as well as some sushi and ZRX. So inactivity followed his departure, and so the value of index has essentially dropped to literally nothing. And that made it worthwhile for someone to buy a massive amount of index tokens for a couple of $1,000s, and they were able to acquire like 4% of supply, and then they're going to vote for themselves to take all the money that's there, all this DAI that's there. And so he's asking people to come in and vote if they have any index tokens left.
By the way, is there something actually illegal about what they're doing?
No. Well, I mean, it's debatable, right? Because the DAO essentially has control, and if they bought all these tokens and are engaging in RFV, then
yeah, but if someone buys token at market price and he just then want to participate in the governance decision making process, I think it's he's playing the game within the rules of the game, no?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's unfortunate. Looks like there's close to $100,000 there, which is about to be stolen, and I don't know if anybody can do anything at this point.
Yeah, but also honestly, I don't know if it's exactly stolen, because this money is just sitting there doing what? And nothing is happening. It's a community that nothing is actually happening in, and then someone sees it and takes advantage of it in a way, but by using the very same rules that they've implemented that about how things should be done. So if they lost interest in that project, in my opinion, they've actually also lost interest in the funds that they were making, because they could have promoted something like of a dissolvement for themselves earlier on as well.
Sure. I think they had plans for it or something. They're probably just hanging on to it and forgot about it. I mean, it's been years since they left the project, and for failed projects, you don't really go back and closely watch how governance tokens are being distributed, right?
And someone saw it and tells himself, what exactly am I honestly, I'm not understanding what he's doing wrong. That's just someone buying tokens and then voting on governance. And I'm over simplifying it, and I'm not trying to be naive, but I still don't understand exactly what's if I have any criticism about these people who want to do it. They play the game. And I think it basically shows that, for example, no one can pull it off with a project like Curve or Frax or something like that, because there's an actual community and stuff are actually happening, and people have actual goals and they want to allow it. So I think above all, it means that if you have a project, you have to have an actual goal and an actual community and an actual discussion about stuff, and to have people care about what you're doing. Otherwise, at some point, someone will take advantage of it.
Yeah, be careful with government contracts.
So,
Yeah. All right, let's talk about.
a cute dog there.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about synthetics. So synthetics is proposing to have SIP 346, Perps v3 integrator incentive. And so the idea here is to introduce a fee sharing mechanism specifically designed for integrators of synthetics Perps v3. According to this proposal, integrators will be entitled to a consistent 20% fee in SUSD for trades executed through their integration with the synthetic Perps v3 system. So this is addressing some of the limitations of the v2 system, and it's essentially going to add almost like a fixed 20% fee, like rev share, into all synthetics products now that are building perps on top. Pretty good for something like Quinta, which is doing good volumes, and nice to see from synthetics as dYdX also adds staking.
This is huge. This is great.
Yeah,
I really like stuff like that, and I think it's going to be a standard at some point. Don't you guys think that because stuff is going to get more and more competitive? So if a project will really want to offer a lot of integration, offering rev share will be a significant part of it. And I'm happy to see synthetics going that route. I think that, for example, for GMX it was huge, and I think that synthetics should definitely follow through on that.
So price reacted accordingly. The price of Quinta, which is the largest perps provider on synthetics, is up 30% in the past day. And over the past 30 days, it is up almost 3x. So lots of optimism in the market right now.
Imagine if Curve or Frax do something like that. Like synthetics. Wow, that's amazing.
So we're going to talk about BitTensor later this week. I don't want to talk about it now, but it's become the hottest thing in crypto right now.
What's that? I didn't hear about
BitTensor, exactly. We'll talk about it later this week, but it's on our radars, and we're going to put something together. Should we be buying the BitTensor top here is really the question. And what are they doing? Anyways, we'll wrap it up here. We're well over the top of the hour, but thanks everybody for tuning in and talking about OpenAI today and synthetics. What else do we discuss? American dynamism, lots of stuff.
Yeah, Argentina.
Good pod today. Tomorrow we have a guest. We have Quintus coming in from Flashbots, who's going to come talk about Intense. So excited to see that.
Cool.
All right. Thanks everybody. See you tomorrow.